Start of Tape 2. Fragile. Preppers. Interview. When I was a little girl, my father told me preppers were people who decided long ago that they couldn't trust their nation to be there for them anymore. That the bonds between us had grown weak long before the Death Stranding. We once had a network spanning the whole wide world that could send items from anywhere to anywhere and connect anyone with anything. But still we were isolated. Still we were alone. Some liked it that way and even wanted more. They wanted walls around their borders, wanted to turn away refugees and outsiders. Some even wanted new nations all their own. They began to see the state as an enemy of their freedom, not a protector of it. The ones most far gone, they didn't trust the country to defend them if something went really wrong. War, terrorism, natural disaster, you name it. So they built shelters and stocked full of supplies in preparation for the worst. And then the worst happened. The Death Stranding. America ceased to exist, and their shelters became their homes, where they would live and they would die. But while they prepared, they hadn't prepared to live there forever, which is why they wound up relying on us couriers so heavily. My father and I didn't want to go back to the old America. We didn't want a country that pushed people apart. We wanted one that brought them together, that allowed them to support one another. And that was what we tried to work toward. Cryptobiotes. Interview. We call these bugs cryptobiotes. They were recorded in reference books and databases back before the Death Stranding, but nobody ever thought to give them a proper classification, so cryptobiotes they stayed. They're named for the process of cryptobiosis, which means hidden life. When environmental conditions get too harsh or resources too scarce, cryptobiotes can shut down their metabolic processes and enter an almost death-like state in order to survive. Tardigrades and sleeping chironomids are capable of this too, but cryptobiotes are on a whole other level. They can survive anything and anywhere, even on the beach or in the seam. And they aren't capable of prolonging only their own lives. Humans who eat them acquire a limited resistance to Timefall too. You won't find them lying around just anywhere though. You need to know where to look. Not many people even knew they existed until recently, so next to no research has been done. But now that their beneficial properties have been recognized, I'm willing to bet they'll play an important role in helping us to understand the beach, the Death Stranding, and everything else. Fragile's father and Fragile Express. My father came up with the name Fragile Express before I was born. The US was Swiss cheese back then. All the voidouts had left craters as far as the eye could see. People were losing their minds looking for a way out. They thought the government would have their back, but it was gone. All the systems, all the gears that kept the world turning, smashed to bits in a matter of seconds. When everything you know breaks, it's hard not to break yourself. Before our new network, there was an old one. The whole nation was online 24/7. Cameras and microphones everywhere, watching and listening and recording. There was a strange sort of comfort in that, people said. A certainty that someone, somewhere, would know if you were in trouble. But after the stranding, that all vanished into the ether. No one was looking out anymore. No one was coming to save you. A lot of folks died waiting, before the rest caught on and took matters into their own hands. My father was one of the latter. He'd been working for a private logistics company, and he and some friends figured they were in a position to bring people supplies and repair vital infrastructure Americans used to rely on to survive. They were builders, men and women who understood the value of what was lost and wanted to reclaim it. My father and them really believed that they could get it all back, bit by bit, and make us whole, make us America. It was a precious, fragile dream, like so much back then. But if we nurtured it, if they stayed true, he knew it could be all ours again. People, ideas, connections, all so fragile. The USA was nothing more than a network of people, and the connections between them. No wonder it broke apart so easily. But everything that's worth something is fragile. That's why I was given this name. My father's not with us anymore. but the bond between us remains, fragile though it is. What became of Fragile? I've been thinking a lot about my father recently. I like to think he'd be happy if he was here. Now that Sam's made us whole again, he'd have his America back. Not that things are perfect, far from it. The Death Stranding's still a thing, and people aren't free to go where they please, so the UCA's prospects don't look too great. But I'm not going to stand by and let it fall apart. After all, it's a symbol of everything my father held dear. Freedom and community. It's bigger than any one of us. Bigger than all of us still standing. We're only here because of those who came before. My father and everyone else back through the generations. I appreciate that more these days, I suppose. And I want to honor the people who made me who I am. That's why I've joined Bridges. I've spent too long wrestling with the past. Obsessed with getting revenge on Higgs. But the past can't be changed. All I can do now is build upon it and help deliver everyone a brighter future. Fragile Express is back in business. My mother's Misanga. My mother abandoned us when I was 12. That's what my father told me anyway. But it doesn't feel like something that happened to me. It's a story about someone else. Their tragedy, not mine. I hardly remember her anyway. The only thing that connects us now is our matching Misangas. My father told me she was a strong woman, that she sacrificed everything for a dream of America, a land full of hope where we'd live free. Does that mean she sacrificed us too? I asked him once. A heart can only bleed so much. Gotta harden yours some if you want to stay unbroken. That's what he said. A mantra, or something like one. Her words to live by when the going gets tough. He said I'd understand one day. I don't know about that. I hope he's right. Heartman. Timefall. Interview. Timefall was first recorded when the Death Stranding occurred. And despite all the years that have passed since then, we're no closer to understanding how or why it accelerates the passage of time for the objects and organisms it touches, or why it immediately turns to ordinary water having done so. Some researchers have gone as far as to posit this process as stealing time. As for why timefall is observed only in certain places, all that we know for certain is that it's somehow affected by local chiral concentrations. This is merely a hunch, but something in me suspects that the Death Stranding may have warped our perception of the passage of time. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, you understand. We humans can conceive of our own deaths, and even of the possibility of a place beyond death. Yes, we have the capacity to conceptualize the future, an evolutionary advantage which aided our development as a species. Well, what if the timefall has given us a new supercharged version of this essential ability? One that will take us to the next stage of our evolution. Perhaps we wouldn't need to hole ourselves up in the knot cities. Perhaps, in time, the Death Stranding will come to be seen as the phenomenon that saved our species. Exciting thoughts, I'm sure you'll agree. I, for one, can't wait to set out on our journey. Who knows what awaits us? Necrosis and the ancient Egyptian view of life and death. The Egyptians believed that we humans were composed of two elements, the Ha and the Ka, the body and the soul. Various texts expound upon their nature in detail, but perhaps it's simplest to conceive of them as follows. The soul is that which joins with the child in the womb and gives life to the body. It is also that which departs the body upon death. Ergo, the body is simply a vessel. Should the soul return to it, it will live again. This is precisely what is observed in near-death experiences. A soul separated, albeit briefly, from its body. The Egyptians believed death not to be an instantaneous change of state, but a process by which the soul moves from one realm to another. But this process itself has changed thanks to the Death Stranding. In the normal order of things, when death occurs, the soul vacates the body and passes into the seam. From there it transitions to the beach, and only then onto the world of the dead. But after the stranding, a soul that has already made its journey to the beach may attempt to return to its body in this world. It was hard to believe at first, but the process of necrosis provided proof of this phenomenon that was difficult to deny. This is why it is imperative that we burn the bodies of the dead. The body must be destroyed to sever the link with the soul. Only then will the soul be free to journey to the world beyond. Chiral symmetry. The word chiral comes from the Greek kia, meaning hand. Compare your left with your right. They seem similar in both size and shape, yes? Now face your palms away from you and place one hand over the other. Their shapes do not overlap exactly, but place your palms together and voila, a match. It is as if one hand is the mirror image of the other. But again, if you were to actually compare the mirror image of your hand to itself, we would see that the two are not identical. This is the essence of chirality, a state in which the mirror image of a shape does not match the original. It has been theorized that BTs are mirror images of ourselves. Were we to exist in the same point in time and space, our shapes, as it were, would not overlap neatly onto one another, save in reflection, and when our particles meet their opposites, a void-out occurs. The new form of communication we have devised utilizes beaches, which are akin to mirrors, reflecting this world and the other, and is the term chiral network. Chiralium. Interview. You would like to know more about chiralium? Well, wouldn't we all? I'm happy to present the latest theories, but you must be aware that this is all they are. Theories. Chiralium, like dark matter, was born along with our universe, and has existed ever since. Just not in a dimension we were able to perceive. Until now. It is the beach that gives us access to that dimension, and with it, knowledge of chiralium's existence. Not just the knowledge of it, of course. We have since observed it coalescing into crystalline form, and recorded measurable physical and mental effects on individuals exposed to it. It has reshaped our understanding of reality, and proven instrumental in the formulation of the multiverse theory of beaches. Chiral matter is not affected by the passage of time. As far as these particles are concerned, none has elapsed since the Big Bang. Little wonder they escaped our notice for so long, until a man and BT first came together in Void-Out and left nothing but chiralium in their wake. Many of these claims are yet to be verified, but I believe that this is a fair summary of the scientific community's current consensus on the matter. No pun intended. I shall soon be heading west with the first expedition, and I look forward to learning more about chiralium and its connections to the beach along the way. Chiral contamination 1. Chiral contamination is the result of prolonged exposure to chiral radiation, which is emitted by chiralium, a substance discovered at the same time as the beach. Prolonged exposure can significantly impact physical and mental health. The effects are not dissimilar from those observed in individuals exposed to extremely high levels of stress, levels which can be fatal even. Such traumatic experiences can alter hormonal secretions, impair immune response, contribute to heart failure, and induce strokes. The most common symptom of chiral contamination is poor sleep quality, due to vivid nightmares. If left unchecked, however, it can quickly progress to a more advanced stage, in which the aforementioned issues may be observed. The potential impact on an individual's mental health cannot be understated. The resulting hormonal imbalances frequently lead to heightened destructive impulses toward the self and others. Those dominated by such urges are named homodemons, the mad ones. In the case of some porters, such as mules, impaired memory and judgment has led them to develop an irrational obsession with their profession, hence the Homo Gestalt moniker. While it should be feasible and preferable for most individuals to avoid chiral contamination at all costs, there are those with a demonstrated resistance who need not be so cautious. I speak, of course, of Doom's sufferers. Chiral contamination 2. Chiral contamination can be alleviated using similar methods to those used to alleviate stress. Increasing oxytocin secretion through contact with other people, administering smart drugs, and so forth. In recent years, however, a hormone dubbed lyxin, known to mitigate the effects of chiral contamination, while also restoring basic physical and mental acuity, has attracted a great deal of attention from the scientific community. Unlike oxytocin, cannot be administered externally. It is secreted within the body. but only in response to external stimuli. It is said to be the hormone principally responsible for the positive feelings that occur when one achieves a goal, enjoys success, receives praise or gratitude, or any other form of like from a fellow human being. The discovery of beaches and the concept of death. With the discovery of the beach, the fundamental truth of death was upended. I doubt you will find many who would deny this. Alas, we can say little with confidence in any objective or scientific capacity, for our understanding of this new realm remains in its infancy and is ever evolving, much like our understanding of the universe as a whole. Perhaps the closest thing we have to a working explanation of the beach relates to the conception of multiverses. But I digress. The beach is arguably both a concept and a reality. A discrete beach is influenced by the mind of the associated individual, and therefore linked to them irrevocably. This is why we have so energetically pursued the psychological, psychoanalytical, and neuroscientific angles when attempting to create a unified theory of the Death Stranding, the beach, and related phenomena. There was a fad a while back in which subjects underwent counseling in order to learn more about their beaches, and in doing so gain a greater understanding of the nature of death. Doom sufferers in particular provided excellent opportunities for study. An interesting theoretical question arose during that period. If a person's speech was a product of their consciousness, might animals have beaches as well? A conundrum on the surface perhaps, but one quickly resolved. Only human corpses undergo necrosis and become BTs, which proves somewhat conclusively that only a human can possess a beach. And yet this begs another question. If all that is required is consciousness akin to that of a human, could an AI have a beach, an android? I, for one, do not believe so. Why? Because the function of our beaches is to connect the world of the living and the dead. If an entity was never born, has not truly lived, and will never know death, surely it cannot have a beach. The Evo Devo Unit. Interview. It seems a rather significant breakthrough has been achieved back at headquarters. They've successfully integrated an Evo Devo unit into a Chiral printer. In case you're not familiar with the term, Evo Devo refers to evolutionary development biology. Your genes, mouse genes, dinosaur genes, the genes of every living being are virtually identical, and yet we develop into such radically different organisms. Thus, a question arises. Why did such disparate life arise from the self-same building blocks? Evo Devo was the field of study that sought to solve that mystery, to lay bare the secrets of evolution. Before the advent of Evo Devo, it was thought that in order to reconstruct a dinosaur, we would require a sample of its DNA. However, thanks to this technology's ability to extrapolate from existing data, we could, with the correct stimulus, grow a dinosaur from the DNA of any living organism. We could, in essence, recreate the process by which dinosaurs evolved from primeval life forms. An Evo Devo unit applies these same principles to the problem of information and object reconstruction. With the help of the Chiral network, we may take incomplete data, and indeed incomplete objects, and reproduce their complete forms. This data can then be fed into a Chiral printer, and voila, partial data yields a finished product. The tech isn't viable for everyday use just yet, but when it is, it will be of incalculable benefit to our research and bring our reconstruction efforts forward by a matter of decades. Higgs particles. Higgs Moynihan. Oh yes, I know the name. The former leader of a private courier organization, as I recall, which served a large region in the West, and was instrumental in providing continued support to the people living there. But as we were so far apart, Bridges struggled to maintain any measure of influence over their operations. It probably didn't help that the separatist movement has always enjoyed strong support in that territory. In the wake of growing violence by the demons, we were shocked to learn that Higgs himself was at their head. What to make of this strange development? Why on earth would a man who once commanded a group devoted to American Reconstructionism suddenly pledge himself to the cause of American destruction? His name only compounds the insult. Have you heard of the Higgs particle, also known as the God particle? It's associated with the Higgs field, that which gives all other particles their mass. Without it, atoms would fly apart, and matter would not exist as we know it. In other words, its very presence prevents mindless destruction. Cosmic irony indeed. Chiral clouds and Timefall. Why do chiral clouds form? Why does Timefall occur? And why does it herald the manifestation of BTs? These are questions we still struggle to answer. As we now know, BTs are beings formed of something akin to antimatter. Their first appearance coincided with the Death Stranding. Prior to that point, it is believed that there was very little in the way of antimatter present in our world at all. But we've since learned that this was far from the case. For even before the Stranding, antimatter was all around us. I discovered a scientific paper on the subject titled On Antimatter and Clouds. According to the paper, the gamma radiation generated by lightning strikes can trigger the formation of positrons, and indeed, particles of antimatter can be detected inside regular rain clouds. The mechanisms by which they are formed is not fully understood, but the mere existence of this phenomenon is enough to suggest something intriguing. Chiral clouds contain chiralium, yes? Well, what would happen if gamma radiation were to act upon them in the same way as it does in regular clouds? Could chiralium, excited by gamma radiation, exacerbate minute distortions in space-time somehow, loosening the seams that connects us to our beaches? And if so, when the excited chiralium mixes with Timefall and descends to the ground below, could the entire region beneath the clouds become much more strongly connected with the beach as a result? This could well explain why BTs appear in areas prone to Timefall. Furthermore, if the antimatter we previously thought did not even exist in any measurable quantity on Earth were in fact present in such commonplace phenomena as the very clouds above us, would this not lend credence to the theory that BTs, beaches, the world of the dead, all of these things may have existed long before the Stranding? Too much of a theoretical leap? Perhaps. I do not deny our world changed, drastically and irrevocably. Nevertheless, could it not be that the Death Stranding was merely the clap of thunder that brought this great change to our attention, and not the change itself? Giant BTs. Interview. The following assessment is based entirely on eyewitness testimony. Be advised that none of these claims have been independently verified. There are several types of BT, and the means by which they interact with the living also varies. Some BTs actively seek out human beings, while others attempt to draw us towards them. Still others are capable of consuming their prey, causing a void out in the process. It is not only their roles and behavior that set them apart, however. Their physiology is also different. Moreover, we have anecdotal evidence suggesting the existence of some truly enormous BTs. Curiously, however, these do not appear to have umbilical cords. Giant BTs are comprised of the consolidated ka of multiple deceased individuals. As a result, the connection between each individual and their beach is lost, which is why the resulting BT does not manifest an umbilical cord. That's the theory, at any rate. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll be able to learn anything more about these entities until the chiral network is online, a day that can't come soon enough. The history of the Odra deck. Does the name Sigmund Freud mean anything to you? He was a famous psychologist, the most famous of them all, perhaps, but I digress. Freud formulated one of his most famous theories after observing his grandson playing with a spool of thread. The boy would throw the spool into the bed, thus ensuring that he could not see it anymore. He would then wind the thread in his hand, gradually drawing the spool back towards him until it became visible again. He repeated this process several times. It was apparently a game he played whenever his mother was elsewhere. Freud proposed that the process of concealing and rediscovering the spool was a coping mechanism, a way in which the boy could put his mind at ease. You see, the boy was in control of the spool. He could make it disappear and reappear at will. This helped him to comprehend his mother's absence, not as something sudden or irrational, but as something controlled, and therefore not a cause for concern. A novelist named Franz Kafka later coined a term for this spool of thread. Odradek. However, he conceived it as an object capable of speech and autonomous movement, a mysterious being, neither dead nor alive. The Odradeks we use are perhaps not so different. These interfaces through which we experience our BB's perception of the surroundings are not unlike spools of thread, a connection between our world and the other side, the living and the dead, human and BB. BTs come in all shapes and sizes. Although eyewitness testimony has led us to identify several types of BTs, perhaps the most interesting of all are the entities which may not be BTs at all. The subjects in question bear some resemblance to jellyfish, and are visible even to those without dooms. While we have little information concerning their physiology and behavior, upon detecting the presence of a human, they will attack by rapidly approaching their target before exploding. Disturbing to say the least, especially given that they appear to be impervious to small arms fire. Though perhaps we can take comfort in the fact that they do not seem capable of causing voidouts. Our best guess at the moment is that these are a subspecies of BT, one that does not form as a result of a human death. Beyond that, they are a complete mystery. Perhaps when the repatriate Sam Porter chooses to join Bridges, we can attempt to develop a means of dealing with this new threat. In the meantime, however, we can but continue to study and speculate. Near-death experience. Until relatively recently, death could only be studied from the perspective of an external observer, as the experience of one's own death couldn't be communicated to another. A collaborative investigation of the phenomenon was fundamentally impossible. But through the examination of subjects in near-death states and the cataloging of their experiences, we have at least been able to bring the scientific method to bear on this most final of frontiers. Even those in a state of so-called brain death exhibit signs of consciousness. What could this possibly mean? Moreover, why do some on the brink of death report out-of-body experiences? Furthermore, why do so many of those who have such experiences describe the same sensations of being beckoned towards a distant light? Many had argued that these commonalities were evidence of an objective reality, of a place beyond life. If nothing else, they at least suggested that death was not an instantaneous change of states, but a process. The beach has since proven much of this beyond a doubt, and the dead rising again as BTs through necrosis demonstrates this process in action. The place beyond life is no longer a theoretical possibility. Its existence must be taken as incontrovertible fact. Cave paintings and stencils. Cave paintings provide an invaluable window into the lives of our ancestors, how they lived, what they experienced. Some have been preserved here on our continent, although most have sadly been lost in voidouts. The oldest cave paintings of all are believed to date back 64,800 years, or more. But all of these are, or perhaps were, in Europe. What's become of them, I wonder? Have they too been obliterated in annihilation events? If not, are the caves containing them now infested with BTs? Does Europe still exist, even? One cannot help but worry that these vital records have been forever lost to us. But I digress. These first paintings were likely made by the Neanderthals. They were crude depictions of creatures, such as deer, bison, and horses, interspersed with stenciled outlines of large hands. Some assert that these are the signatures of primeval painters. But could they not also be depictions of BT handprints? Could our ancient relatives have been trying to tell us something, or issue a warning? Or is that perhaps one flight of fancy too far? BTs and voidouts. The following conclusions are largely derived from a handful of eyewitness accounts. While I would advise anyone to take them with a grain of salt, I still believe they are worth sharing. BTs pursue their prey through a multi-step process. In the first, they begin searching for a target. The handprints left behind is evidence of this behavior. Upon detection, one or more BTs will attempt to seize their target and drag it towards a much larger entity. To clarify, however, a voidout does not occur at the point of contact between the giant and the human. but only once the human has been subsumed into the giant's body. We think this may be because this is the only place where antimatter is present within the entity. It goes without saying that BTs are entirely different from any creature that is of this world, and we have much to learn about them still. One thing is for certain, however. We must come to understand them, else we may never overcome the existential threat that they pose. Neanderthals are not extinct. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are believed to share a common ancestor in the form of Homo heidelbergensis, but there are clear differences between the two. Neanderthals were brutish and brawny, well equipped to hunt larger animals and survive in colder climates, whereas Homo sapiens were slender-limbed and only capable of hunting smaller prey. But as millennia passed, Homo sapiens learned to create tools and hunt in packs. The Neanderthals, who actually had larger brains than the Homo sapiens, also fashioned tools of their own, but these were crude in comparison and developed little over 200,000 years. Perhaps because these simple-minded beings favored small family units, so that even if a breakthrough occurred, it was unlikely to be shared with others. This isolation, more than any other factor, seems to have led to their decline. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, conceived religion, with which large numbers of individuals could be bound together in service to a common cause. Strength in numbers also made the communities more resistant to famine and other calamities. In other words, Homo sapiens grew stronger through interpersonal connections by creating what came to be called society. If we persist in our divided state, we risk losing this hard-won unity and dooming ourselves to the Neanderthals' fate. We will dwindle and die, apart and alone. But history holds another intriguing lesson. Homo sapiens did not disdain Neanderthals. The two species even intermingled on occasion. Our DNA retains vestiges of our ancient cousins even now. So you see, while a species itself may disappear, its genetic legacy may yet endure. Heartman's theory of evolution. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto the land, their consciousness expanded to process the new realm that lay before them. But their development did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammals formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually they came together in communities, and then larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time, and in order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the Death Stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the Chiral network, which incorporates the beach, where time does not exist. Or consider Timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact when we must cope with such irrational phenomena? Yet that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go so far to say that our conceptions of reality are under threat. How could they not be, when our very eyes deny the invisible BT that stands before us? The Stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution on consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. That is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as a means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the Death Stranding. Umbilical cords in Devonian-era fossils. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the Death Stranding and concerns the discovery of a 300-million-year-old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was a fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child. a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species, Matripiscus attenboroughi. It's a placoderm, an extinct class of armored marine creatures that used to live in seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era, right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, one of the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we will be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and the Death Stranding. Bridgmanite in the Earth's mantle. Bridgmanite is a mineral found in the lower part of the Earth's mantle. It was named in the honor of the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Percy Williams Bridgman. Bridgmanite comprises 38% of the Earth, but because it's only found deep beneath the surface, it's very difficult to acquire any samples for analysis. As luck would have it, however, a material with the same properties was discovered inside a meteorite before the Death Stranding. Of course, meaning that a certain amount of research has already been conducted into this mysterious mineral, after a fashion. From this, a theory has been advanced positing that Bridgmanite contains a certain amount of carelium that was absorbed into the mineral at the moment of the Earth's creation. If this theory is true, then it may go some way to explaining the curious tar that has been observed to bubble up from below the ground. Furthermore, if carelium does indeed come from the other side, as we suspect, then it would follow that it has been linked to ours from the very beginning. In essence, the heart of the planet could be likened to the world of the dead. How appropriate, given that chiral closes and binds us to the surface forevermore. None may ascend to heaven when they die, for our final destination lies beneath our feet. Ashes to ashes, as they say. About the Dreamcatcher. There is a psychological framework which posits that the human personality is comprised of various strands. Our inner mind, our outer character, each is a strand, a thread, made up of yet smaller threads, which intertwine with others to make us who we are. And in nurturing each strand, we become better people, and inure ourselves against psychological harm. Or so the theory goes. As odd as it may sound, this is not an entirely dissimilar concept to the one which lies behind that most ubiquitous of Ojibwe artifacts, the Dreamcatcher. You've seen them before, yes? A woven web of threads said to protect the mind from harm by trapping nightmares, thus ensuring that only pleasant dreams pass through. It's no coincidence that these charms came to symbolize the pan-Indian movement of the 20th century. The many and varied Native American tribes strove to set aside their differences in order to foster a group identity, a singular dream. As such, it came to symbolize what made them one people, what united them. In essence, strands can represent that which makes us who we are, that which differentiates us from what we are not, and the bonds we share with one another. Quipus. Quipu means a knot in the Quechua language. Objects given this name were used in ancient Incan society to record and transmit information. And yes, Amelie just happens to wear one. The Inca would pass quipu from one place to another, via a network of messengers known as chaquis. You might be surprised at the complexity that can be communicated through a simple system of knots, and not merely numerical data. It is said that whole histories could be contained in these intricate webs. Some theories suggest that they were ascribed magical properties too. Certain combinations of knotted numbers were thought to encourage the dead to sleep peacefully in their graves, for example. We see that the quipu is a tool for communication, storytelling, and rituals. About Sam's return. Sam has returned, safe and sound. It had been about a month since he departed for Amelie's beach. 30 days of relentless searching for us, though for him it must have felt like an eternity. I cannot imagine the isolation and despair he must have been forced to endure, a suffering known only by Amelie and Bridget. Sam has told us about the extinction entity, and how it granted humanity a reprieve, but beyond that he is reluctant to speak. Well, we shall not put any pressure on him. Frankly, I expect we would struggle to comprehend anything else he tells us, Suffice it to say that the last stranding has been avoided, even if its precursor has forever reshaped our world. Thousands and thousands of years from now, should intelligent life walk the earth and find our fossils, they will likely conclude that Homo sapiens died out in the sixth extinction. Perhaps, if we are lucky, they may even find records we leave behind. Still, we cannot hope to guess how much they will understand about who we were. After all, their intelligence will not be like ours. Theirs will be a different understanding of the world, of the universe. Different forms of existence, different conception of what it is to be alive. These invariably lead to different conceptions of what it is to die. But it matters not if they never understand who we were. All that matters, in my opinion at least, is that they know that we were here. What became of Heartman? Countless trips to the beach every single day, each spent searching in vain for my wife and daughter. Such has been my existence, my fate, if you will. After all, if each person's beach is their own, and the worlds each of us inhabit posthumously are also unique. If that's the case, then even death shall not reunite me with my family. That is why I must search beach after beach after beach for any trace, any clue, anything that might lead me back to them. Death is not the end, after all, and the past is never dead. Indeed, it's not even past. I have decided to give up my quest, for I come to realize it will change nothing. I must move on with my life. And as a matter of fact, I already have. I've met someone. Her name is Samantha Spade. I call her Sam, a spirited Hispanic woman. You can imagine how frustrating it is to live in 21-minute intervals. Speaking of which, an ageless president. There is one rather trivial question that has caused me a great deal of consternation. Bridget was verging on the elderly, yet her appearance was that of someone much, much younger. Indeed, she remained remarkably youthful until her cancer began to take its toll. Sam has a photograph of Bridget from only 10 years ago, in which she still looks like a young woman. Some have posited the theory that it was her strength of will, her desire to rebuild America, that kept her young. Mind over matter. I suppose there may be some truth to that claim. I, however, suspect that the secret to Bridget's youthful appearance is to be found on the beach. Deadman was good enough to bring me her umbilical cord, unbeknownst to Sam, of course, and I was able to confirm that it retained a connection to the beach. This is almost certainly related to why she did not age at the normal rate. Of course, we have no way of truly understanding this link between Bridget and the beach, or how long it existed. Similarly, we have no idea when she was born. We can only surmise that Bridget's connection ensured that her ha was not fully subject to the passage of time. Does this mean that I too shall remain ageless well into my senior years? We shall have to see. Right now I have something more pressing to attend to. Da Vinci's Madonna of the Yarn Winder. Leonardo da Vinci, that most gifted of Renaissance polymaths, once conceived of a composition that would come to be known as Madonna dei Fusi, or Madonna of the Yarn Winder. In it, Mary cradles the infant Christ in her arms, while he stares, rapt, at a spindle, onto which thread is wound, a spindle shaped like a cross. His mother seems more than a little perturbed. Did she perhaps have a premonition that her son would be sacrificed to the salvation of mankind? Me? I like to think of it as the spindle with which the Grecian fates determined the destiny of man. In the ancient tales, the length of the thread dictated the lifespan of the individual in question. Of the three sisters, it was Clotho who unwound the thread, Lachesis who measured the length, and Atropos who, at the appointed hour, made the final cut. If Mary did know the fate that was to befall Christ, might she have intervened, cutting the string at a different point and liberating him of his burden? I cannot help but wonder. As an aside, while I generally prefer the Greek nomenclature, I do have a strange fondness for Lachesis' Roman moniker, Decima. Egyptian mummies, pyramids, etc. At what point can it be said that man truly understands what it means to die, it would seem reasonable to suggest that it was when he began to bury his dead, a practice which originated with the Neanderthals. In a way, one might say that our growing understanding of death drove our development as a species, our fear of it, our attempt to conquer it. Why, it could be argued our entire history revolves around these obsessions. Take the great pyramids of Egypt, or the tombs of the ancient emperors of China. The more powerful the person, the bigger and grander their final resting place. Or, to post a more radical theory, could the very concepts of power and society themselves have emerged solely to facilitate the creation of such monuments, such challenges to the finality of death? Either way, in leaving behind something they hoped they might endure throughout the ages, the builders of these edifices believed that they too might live on forever. The mummies of the Egyptians are another means by which man sought to fulfill his desire to escape the finality of death. They were created that the spiritual self, the Ka, would have a physical vessel, or Ha, to which it could return. The Soku Shinbutsu, or mummified monks of Buddhism, are similar in this respect. However, the monks in question aim to transition straight from life to Buddhahood, in other words, to forego death altogether. But now that the beach has brought us into direct contact with the world beyond, our relationship with death must further evolve. The next stage in our understanding is upon us. The Egyptian view of the brain. It is common nowadays to think of the personality, the mind, of consciousness as a whole, as a phenomena born exclusively of the brain. However, to the ancient Egyptians, things were different. They believed that a person's soul, their spiritual essence, resided in the heart. As a result, the mummification process involved the removal of all internal organs, save this one, the brain included. To the Egyptians, a man's Ka was represented by and contained within the heart, whereas the Ha was made up of the other organs and the remainder of the flesh. Hardly a picture compatible with modern medical science. But consider for a moment the BBs which porters utilize in the field, and the brain-dead still mothers to which they are bound. Could it not be said that in turning our attention away from the brain and towards the heart, the womb, the umbilicus, in our quest to grow closer to the world of the dead, that we are perhaps returning to the old ways? The corals of the seam. Life began in the oceans, and as it evolved, it graduated to the land. At least this is what was believed until recently. To creatures of the sea, the land is a harsh and unforgiving place. Given this, what could have possibly have compelled these organisms to make such a drastic transition? Consider that fossils of the first fish to adapt themselves to land have been found in regions with unusually large tidal range. Could it be that these creatures developed legs in order to more swiftly return to the safety of the sea when stranded? Could their evolutionary leap have been triggered by this traumatic experience? If so, could similar circumstances have shaped the evolution of the coral-like organisms that inhabit the seam, and driven them to develop an ability to live between life and death, between time and timelessness? Coral is, after all, older than any organism of the land, and hardy enough to have weathered the mass extinction of 540 million years ago. And it is a life form upon which many other organisms rely for survival. Bearing all this in mind, one could argue that the ability to survive in the seam is indicative of a profound evolutionary leap. Repatriates and void-outs. I have come across a number of old reports which make mention of humans who have certain powers which have led to them becoming known as repatriates. As we know, when a human and a BT come into contact, a void-out results, which is analogous to what physicists would term an annihilation event. These events occur when matter meets antimatter, and mass is converted violently and abruptly into energy. The process is highly efficient, though some energy is lost to the production of neutrinos. Similarly, in a void-out, vast amounts of energy are released, resulting in destruction on a devastating scale, which leaves behind a large crater. Void-outs triggered by contact with repatriates, however, consistently result in smaller craters. It is suspected that this is because energy is lost to the beach, in the same manner that it is lost to neutrino production in a conventional annihilation event, and that in the case of repatriates, the amount of energy lost is particularly high. That said, how the repatriate's body survives is a far bigger mystery, and one which I will refrain from commenting on until I have had the chance to examine one in the flesh. One notable repatriate is Sam Strand, a former member of Bridges who left some years ago and has been making his way in the world as a porter ever since. I do hope I get to meet him someday, considering how invaluable he could be in advancing our understanding of the true nature of beaches and the Death Stranding. BTs are reaching out to us. 2.4 million years ago, Homo habilis started to craft stone tools. Hands are so very important, don't you think? Our other sensory organs passively interpret data. Our eyes light, our ears sound, our noses smell, our mouths taste. But hands are different. To touch requires conscious action. To grasp, more so. To connect that which is in our left hand with that which is in our right, still more. And the handprints we see when BTs seek out humans? Why, I'd say that's just evidence of our otherworldly friends yearning to forge a connection. They're reaching out to us, attempting to bridge the gap between the realm of the dead and that of the living. King Midas and the Chiral crystals. Rumors have been circulating regarding a man who calls himself King Midas. Unlike his namesake from Greek mythology, however, this gentleman does not turn all that he touches to gold. Instead, he claims to wield the power to create chiral crystals at will. The stories suggest that he gained this power as a result of experiments involving organisms which possessed a similar ability. I am of course aware of the existence of microbes that could melt and condense gold, in effect extracting it from ore deposits. But this is the first time I have heard of any organisms that can do something similar with chiralium. These organisms are apparently akin to cryptobiotes, as well as the coral that is found in the seam, in that they exist outside of time. If this man has truly managed to harvest such organisms, then it is an extraordinary achievement, which could lead to untold possibilities. Veritable bioalchemy, even. Much like his mythical counterpart, however, King Midas is said to have paid a heavy price for the power. Indeed, his body is turned into a mass of particles, a side effect of crystallizing all the chiralium with which he came into contact. It is said that the only evidence of his existence are 2 golden handprints he left behind. Now, I must temper this rather dramatic story by stressing that no microbes capable of the previously described ability have been detected. As such, I suspect the king is nothing more than an urban legend, the kind of story spun by dreamers in a world where chiral crystals are rare and precious, and can only be collected from perilous timefall-soaked places. Perhaps you could even consider it a morality tale, the moral being, of course, that greed is never good, whether one lusts for gold or for chiral crystals. It is, however, a remarkable coincidence that not long after I first heard talk of this modern-day King Midas, I also started to hear rumors concerning a man wearing a golden death mask. Might the two be related? Who knows? Evolution, Death Stranding, and the fear of dying. Death has been Homo sapiens' constant companion for every step of our evolutionary journey. Our cultures and civilizations have been built with an awareness of our relationship with death, the extent to which we can accept and live with it. Out of fear of the inevitable decomposition and destruction of the flesh, our ancestors developed elaborate embalming techniques, death masks and the like. Indeed, the mask has ever been a symbol of the soul that transcends this world to exist for eternity in the next. The mummies and sarcophagi of ancient Egypt are but one instance of this. Honored individuals were given masks and placed inside sarcophagi in order to be preserved for eternity, thereby transcending death and attaining immortality. Paintings and photographs are no different, really. They are simply more modern variants of the Egyptians' masks and sarcophagi. Indeed, all of humanity's crowning achievements, art, language, writing, are arguably a reaction to death and an expression of our desire to overcome it. They are great feats born from fear, and one might even go as far to say that it was the primal fear of death that drove the evolution of our ancestors into Homo sapiens in the first place. In fact, I would go further still. I would posit that it was this fear that brought about the Death Stranding itself. It has certainly seemed more and more plausible of late. Bridges needs Homo ludens. I have already spoken at length about the new varieties of man that have emerged in the wake of chiral pollution and from the resulting phobias. Homo demens, Homo gestalt, not to mention those touched by dooms. This much is common knowledge. I, however, would posit that we could further categorize the humans of this day and age. Take our comrades Mama and Lochne, for example. They are creators, are they not? People who use tools to make things. Craftspeople, Homo faber. Consider Deadman, one who looks the dead in their eyes every day, one who takes their organs as his own. His relationship with death is transcendental, sublime. It is, in essence, his faith, and he a homo religiosus. As for myself, Homo loquens, a linguist, one who seeks to understand the world through the language of science and logic. There is, however, another very special type of human, a breed that would serve bridges rather well. Homo ludens, they who play. Be it deliberate or unintentional, Homo ludens unites people, creating culture, shaping the very world around them. Not through violence, nor laws or prescriptions, but rather through metaphorical acts of play. I know of only one person who matches this description, the one they call the Great Deliverer, Sam Porter. Despite Die Heartman's best efforts, however, his whereabouts are still unknown. End of tape 2.